As much as I thought that I had grieved for my dad before, was nothing compared to the actual howling that came out of my body during that plant medicine ceremony. That howling was so deep, and it just makes me think, obviously my elder siblings have not gone through plant medicine ceremony. Like, what must they be holding in their body? Because we all adored our father so much, and he is the closest person to me in all my family, and there's so much inside of us.
Hello, today we are here to talk about Eleni's book that she's writing, and I am so excited to hear about it myself because I haven't heard enough yet. And her book is called Effortless Abundance, and it's in 3 parts, correct? So tell us a little bit about the 3 parts, because I'm very curious. We're going to talk about the first chapter today, but tell us about the 3 parts, and then we can break it down to what that first chapter is.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm really excited about this. And the 3 parts are, part 1 is the awakening. That's what part 1 is called. Part 2 is 8 mind expanding revelations that I had from the awakening. So it's called 8 mind expanding revelations. And part 3 is the path to effortless abundance. So what part 3 has is 13 practical tools that we can use in our day-to-day life towards effortless abundance. So that's the way that it's broken down. It's like, what happened? What was my spiritual awakening? What were my revelations from that spiritual awakening? And now how do we integrate that into our daily life?
So it's a memoir and a how-to, a teaching memoir.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
So the
it's,
first chapter, do you have a name for the first chapter yet?
yeah. So the
Okay.
chapter 1 is called Awakening from the Illusion.
Okay. And I'm assuming awakening must be your awakening from the illusion of the life you were living. Tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I won't tell you about my actual revelations because that comes later on. So, what
Mm-hmm.
chapter 1 is all about how I awakened. So, what actually occurred for me to awaken? In terms of awakening from the actual illusion, there were 8 massive revelations that changed the course of my life and how I live my life, and what took me out of stress and workaholism towards peace and serenity. But yeah, chapter 1 is all about, like, well, what happened? What was the spiritual awakening about? How did it occur?
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. When you say the illusion, give us a little bit more about what the illusion is.
The illusion is the illusion that this is all there is, that what we see is the reality. When now we're going into part 2, which is, what we see is actually not the reality, it's the illusion. What we don't see is the reality. So what we think is real is not real. And what is real is what we don't believe to be real. So the illusion is the actual life that we are living.
Okay. So is it like a matrix or a simulation is how you would explain it? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
is that what yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. And
It's
so the
really hard to explain, but
mhm,
I'd rather get into that part of it like in future episodes,
okay.
because chapter 1 at the very beginning is really like what happened.
Okay.
What are the circumstances that led to my spiritual awakening, and then we go into part 2 in terms of what I saw.
Yeah. Okay. So how long ago was this in your life? Were you a child? Was it midlife? How long ago was this?
No, I was not a child. Oh my God, this was only a few years ago. So this
Yeah.
was July 7th, 2021. And I was 53 years old, and it was 2 months after the passing of my father. So
Okay.
that's when my spiritual awakening happened. So, prior to that time, yes, I had been experiencing an awakening where I was awakened to the fact that there is so much more than what we know. Yes, for many years I was experiencing the unraveling of the awakening, but the big, and this is what it is,
Mhm.
that happened at the age of 53.
So, a couple things, soul sister. I just have to say, I didn't realize that was the day that you flag your spiritual awakening. That's my birthday. Is that not crazy? Of course.
Of course, right?
So,
Oh
I'm
my
curious.
God.
Yeah, how did you know that was the day of your awakening, of your opening your eyes to the illusion of the life you were living?
Because that's the day that I had my first plant medicine ceremony.
Okay. And is that in the book?
That's all detailed in the book.
Ah,
And I'm really happy to say, anything you want to know right now about that.
oh, okay. So, how did you even start? Because if that was your awakening, that means before that, your eyes were closed, is how I explain it. Like your eyes were closed to the big opening of a spiritual awakening. And then you decided to do plant medicine. What made you decide that?
What actually happened was that I was following someone that I personally knew who's actually from Scotland, who started to take ayahuasca in Costa Rica. And so I thought, oh, this is really interesting. What is this ayahuasca? And so I was following his journey. And this is when we were in lockdown in Melbourne. I started to become very interested and started to watch documentaries. So I was sitting down watching all these documentaries on ayahuasca and watching people have these incredible life expanding ceremonies with shamans that had been trained over thousands of years by taking this sacred plant medicine. And, all of a sudden, if they had depression or if they had anxiety or if they had addictions, it was gone in a second, and their whole lives opened up in terms of their purpose work and so on. And so I was completely fascinated. So with plant medicine, it is a portal. It's a portal to another realm, and there are many different portals, and that is one of them. It's a very powerful portal because it takes you there straight away. You're either called to it or you're not. For me, it was an immediate calling. It was like, I have to do this. It wasn't like, oh, should I or shouldn't I? It was like, I have to do this. I'm doing it. And I said to Christian, my partner, I said to him, tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, because what actually happened was tomorrow. But what I said to him was, as soon as we get out of lockdown, because I was at the time in Melbourne, which was the world's most lockdown city for the biggest
Mm.
period of time. So I said to him, as soon as we get out of lockdown, I'm telling you, I'm going to Costa Rica because I'm doing a plant medicine ceremony. I was that definite. And it's so interesting, Karen, because whenever I've had a quantum leap in my life, like the quantum leap prior to that, the big massive quantum leap was in 2014 when I had said to my then husband John, I said to him, after watching a documentary on Graceland for the like 1,000th time, I said, no matter what, I'm booking next year, I'm going to Memphis because I'm going to
Mhm.
Graceland. And then, all the things that happened, our relationship and everything that happened, me becoming an international speaker was as a result of that definite following my joy, following my heart kind of pull. So this decision was about going to Costa Rica, and then something just as miraculous occurred. So the Elvis story I've also got in my book, and we'll talk about it in a future episode, because
Okay.
Elvis is highlighted in my book. It goes a couple of chapters there because there were so many miracles that happened with that. But in this instance, I said, that's it, I'm going to Costa Rica. The very next day, I was training in my garage because we couldn't go to the gym. And literally at the very end of my training, I just did a stretch. That's all I did was a stretch, just to actually, cool down and stretch. And as I stretched, my back got caught and I got stuck. And so I then thought, oh no, I've got to get this fixed. I was in a lot of pain. And so I had remembered that quite a few people had said to me that there was this, what we call a myotherapist, and I think you might call them a physical therapist. Um, there's this man who actually was vision impaired, so he couldn't see, but he was brilliant with his hands. And I had never been to him before. So, because previously, whenever I needed body work done, it was my second husband that would do that because he was a myotherapist. So that would be inappropriate for me to call him to do body work on me. So, so I had to think of someone else, and then this name came to me, and people had recommended him. So I contacted him, and I went there the first time ever. And as he's working on my body, he starts talking to me about his experience with plant medicine.
And most people wouldn't just bring that up to like anybody, right? Like that was kind of random that someone would just start talking to you about it.
Totally random.
Yeah.
Like it's something that you usually open up to once you feel confident because it's illegal. Okay, so he was talking about illegal activity in Australia, so it's illegal. Now, a couple of things, the circumstances that gave me the trust to trust him were that he was so conservative looking. So if he was someone, now this is my judgments coming in, okay, if he was someone that was wearing dreadlocks, had piercings all over or tattoos all over, I may have been a little bit more cautious about what he said to me. But this was the epitome of a conservative looking person who was very articulate. And I've got to say, I absolutely have no judgments against people who have, like my partner has got a lot of tattoos. No judgments against piercings or tattoos or anything like that. It's just where our mind goes to categorize certain people according to our belief systems and according to our conditioning and according to everything. We've all got biases that we work through, okay? We all have biases. And so what the universe gave me was a real conservative looking person so that I felt safe. So he looked like an accountant. He was dressed like that,
Would you say that is part of the illusion, the judgment,
Of course, yeah, most definitely,
yeah.
But these things happen so that, this is happening for us, not against us. So this person looked this way so that I could feel very, very safe. He spoke he was very intelligent. He spoke in a very articulate way. He was very well considered. And he told me that about his experience with plant medicine and how it had changed his life. And I'm like, what? And he told me that it was a derivative of ayahuasca called silawasca, which was a combination of Syrian rune and psilocybin. And it was very similar to ayahuasca. And the person that was running these ceremonies was very well regarded. He had a very sacred altar. He had been trained by Peruvian elders, and he was seeing people in the highest levels of government and the police force, and it was this secret thing that was happening in my state.
Secret society.
A secret society. So police sergeants, detectives, politicians, you name it, at the highest levels were going to see this person so that they could overcome whatever challenges or trauma that was going on in their life. So for me, it wasn't about overcoming a trauma, is what I thought it was. It was going to be for expanding my purpose. But little did I know when I first started this path of wanting to do this ayahuasca that, that my dad was going to pass and that I would actually have severe trauma. So when I first started this path, I didn't know any of that. My dad was well. And so he started to tell me about this person. And I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you need to hook me up, because the way that it works is you don't just ring up this person and say hi. It doesn't work like that. so we have to come recommended, and so he had to pass my details on to him, and then when he is able to, he contacts me, gives me an interview. So that's what happened. So what happened was, the shaman, who we will call Sam, Sam the shaman, he actually contacted me a few weeks later. They don't contact you straight away. These shamans are not there doing admin all the time and looking at their phone.
Mm-hmm.
They've got
Like we do.
big, yeah, they've got big things
Mm-hmm.
to do. And so he didn't contact me until a few weeks later. Of course, me being as impatient as I was, I'm like contacting the physical therapist and saying to him, did you give him my details? And he'll say, I'll chase him up for you. I'll chase him up. And so
I
he
love
finally contacted me. We made an appointment time and he interviewed me and basically asked me a number of questions. One, am I on antidepressants?
it. Mm-hmm.
No. So they won't give this plant medicine to anyone who's on any type of antidepressants or any kind of medication. You have to be medication free to have this, to take this plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Another important part is, what's the reason that I want to do this? Because they will not take on people who just want a thrill ride. So just
Mm-hmm.
to get their rocks off, like just to have a fun experience. This is not a fun thing. This is serious ceremonies that are occurring here, where he has been trained by a lineage, an unbroken lineage of 550 master shamans from Peru. And he has been chosen to do this work and bring it to Australia. So it's not something that's done just to have a fun experience. So what was my reason that I wanted to do it? And what I said was, I just want to connect to my purpose more than anything in the world. There's nothing I want to do more than connect to my purpose. And I
Mm-hmm.
have this feeling that this is the path.
So it sounds like there was a series of events that you believe led up to that you were supposed to do this. Is that?
100%. Like when you have this knowing,
Mhm,
you would have felt this too, Karen, I'm sure. Like it's such a huge pull that you can't do anything else except. It was like the time
mhm,
that I knew I was going to Memphis. Like there was nothing that could stop me from doing that.
mhm,
There was no ifs or buts, but what ifs. It's like I'm doing this. And so as
mhm,
soon as this plant medicine came into my
mhm.
sphere, it was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing
You
this.
just
I
knew.
don't care how I do this. Like I was prepared to go to Costa
Mhm,
Rica, but the
yeah.
universe, the
Mhm,
very next day,
mhm.
and that's
Popped
another
it
thing.
in your lap.
The very next
Mhm,
day popped it in my lap by giving me a pat in my back,
mhm,
by having already set up conversations where
mhm,
three people that I respect recommended this particular person,
mhm, mhm,
and where this person happened to have an opening straight away for me, which was very
mhm,
unusual.
mhm,
And for me to go to this person and for him to feel the pull to actually speak about his plant medicine, which I
mhm,
had asked him about much later on. Do you talk about this? He says, no, he doesn't talk about this to people. It's just
mhm,
that in that moment, he felt really safe and he felt the need to talk about it. So this is where we have our angels always whispering and coming
mhm,
in to assist, and our guides
mhm,
coming in to assist. And some energy said to him, tell her
mhm.
about, you know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
plant
and your souls
medicine.
were connecting. Yes, yes. So in the book, in that first chapter, do you talk about your intentions of what you intended as you went into the ceremony? And is that
Yeah,
something that they ask you to be prepared for?
yeah, absolutely. But before we get there, so what actually happened was, as he interviewed me and we arranged for a date, and the date was going to be in March. And then what happened was that weekend that I was supposed to go in, that date, my dad went into hospital.
Mm,
And we found out that this was serious. And so I contacted him, because when you're in this plant medicine ceremony, you're not contactable for like a whole day and a whole night. So I rang him and I said to him, I can't do this ceremony this weekend as planned, even though we had booked it from a long time ago,
Mhm.
because my dad's going into hospital and he's my priority. So, like, I cannot be uncontactable. I
Mhm.
need to be with my dad. And so I actually then went through the process of completely being focused on my dad. I moved into hospital and stayed with my dad,
Mhm.
and didn't contact Sam, the shaman, until my dad had passed, until that period was over. And so little did I know at that time that this was perfect timing, because I was having my first ceremony, plant medicine ceremony. So my dad passed May the 1st, and I finally decided to have the plant medicine ceremony. It was booked for July 7th. So it was enough time for me to get over the initial huge outpouring of grief. And now it was time to get into the real grief that was underneath, because the crying that I did during my first plant medicine ceremony was like oceans of grief. That I don't know
Mhm.
how that those oceans of grief would have actually left my body without doing that plant medicine. So it was perfect. It was like, imagine if I had done it before, it wouldn't
Mhm.
have had the same impact. I really
Mhm.
needed to do it after my dad's passing. So it was all perfect
Mhm.
in that dad went into hospital literally just days before the planned time, so that
Yeah.
I could pull out and reschedule it,
Yeah, like
if
it
that
was
makes
meant to
sense.
be, that it
Totally
was.
meant to
Yeah.
be, totally meant to
Mhm.
be. And so the next
Mhm.
thing was that happened was that before going into the ceremony, you have to prepare the body.
Mhm.
So I talk about all this in the book in terms of the preparation. So you have
Yeah.
to, the rules are, you have to cleanse the body. So the body needs to be as clean and pure as possible before taking on plant medicine.
Mhm.
So the rules are no coffee. That was easy for me.
Mhm.
I don't drink coffee.
Okay.
Um, no alcohol. And of course, miraculously, I had already stopped drinking alcohol by that time. And this is someone that I used to drink every night, a few glasses. And so, if that rule would have been really difficult for me if I
Mhm.
had not already stopped drinking. So
Sure.
again, everything was lined up perfectly. So no
Mhm.
alcohol for those couple of weeks before ceremony, no
Mhm.
caffeine. Now,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that there is caffeine in green tea, and that did affect me on the day. So
Mm.
so after that, I stopped drinking green tea as well. So
So
I was drinking lots of green tea.
so I'd love to know, how did it affect you on that day?
By the green tea, which I didn't realize had
Mhm.
caffeine. It was just like, it's an obvious thing, but I always saw it as herbal for some reason, but it's not herbal. Is
Mhm.
it gave me a really big headache,
Okay.
like very, very big headache
Mm.
on the actual day,
Mhm.
which was very painful. And they said that you must have been having caffeine for you to be having that pain. And we went through it and we realized, oh, the green tea.
Mm.
So no heavy foods. That's easy for me. Like, I don't eat fried foods anyway, ever. So
Mhm.
heavy foods like meats and curries and things like that, I don't eat any of those types of foods regardless. And no chocolate. That was
Oh,
hard.
yes.
That was the hard bit. But
So sorry.
interestingly, Karen, now this is really interesting, is that before going to ceremony, I just thought it was going to be another experience, right?
Mhm.
But my ego knew different. So
Mm.
my ego knew that it was about to be seen. I didn't know that, because I didn't
Mhm.
even know I had this ego. Okay?
Mhm.
But my ego knew, because the day before I was due to go to ceremony, it was like a raging dictator. It tried to
Mm.
assert how needed it was in my life
Mhm.
by having all these uh, stressful conversations during the day to all my staff about what they weren't doing right, about what was going on, about, like, trying to take control of every single little thing in a very stressful, intense kind of way.
In an
And
egoic way.
in a very egoic way. And even the morning of the ceremony, when we were Ubering to the ceremony location,
Mhm.
I was doing work until the very last second. I was sending emails. It was like this frantic, intense of send an email, quick, make sure this gets done, make sure that gets done. Oh my God, this is going to get done. Ah, that kind of intense energy of get this done, get this done, get this done. Is this
Mhm.
person done their job? Has this person done their job? Has this person done their job? So it was like the ego saying, see how important I am? I've got to make
Mhm.
sure that all these things get done. Otherwise, I'll never
Mhm.
get done. And if they don't get done, you're stuffed. You know,
Mhm.
like that's the way the ego talks. The ego's like,
Mhm.
you need me, girl, because if without me, how would you get all this done? And if you don't get all this done, none of your bills will be paid. So these are the sort of things that happen automatically in one's mind that we don't realize is actually the ego. We think it's ourselves, but it's not ourselves. It's not us.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
also part of the illusion. It's not us. It's not who we
Mhm.
are. We are not that intense, frantic, controlling energy. That intense, frantic, controlling energy is the ego.
And these are all things that you learned when you did the plant medicine, when you opened up
Yeah.
spiritually to
Yeah.
a different way of being. It sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And not learnt in a gentle way, but confronted in a real bang, this is the way it is.
Mhm.
I've got to say, just as a disclaimer, that every single person, because I've spoken to a lot of people since who've had plant medicine ceremonies, have a different experience. So everyone has the experience they're supposed to have. For me, it was a massive awakening. It shook me to my core in terms of what I saw, which I'll
Mhm.
talk about in a future episode, and the revelations that came out of it. But it was incredible. It was really, really incredible in terms of the actual event, for sure.
So we get to hear in future episodes what
Oh,
you
yeah.
experienced
I want to
and
talk about
okay.
everything, absolutely
Okay.
everything. But what I will say, just leading up to that was when I arrived and the ceremony was to begin. So the ceremony was going to just be me and my partner Christian. Nobody else was there. It was just going to be us two. And the rules that were given to us at the beginning were 4 rules that the shaman said to us was going to occur on that day. Would you like to hear them?
Yeah, I would love to hear them.
So, number 1 rule is he said the medicine always wins.
Okay.
So, if you think you're going to have a battle with the medicine because you're fighting something,
Mhm.
don't even start. The medicine
Mhm.
always wins. You cannot win over the medicine. So, what
Okay.
he meant was that the more that we resist, the more painful the experience becomes. And
Sure.
you cannot get your way because
Mhm.
you have to surrender. So the
Okay.
medicine always wins. Number 2 is when you feeling like this is really hard and you don't know how to get through it, rather than trying to get up and do something which people have tried to run away. That's the
Mhm.
worst thing you can do. And I've even seen documentaries where during these intense times people have actually got up and run away through the jungles of the Amazon. Like, I can't think of anything worse. You've got to just stay still. And he
Mhm.
said, breathe as if you're breathing through a straw. Breathe as if you're breathing through a straw. So always just go back to the breath, go back to the breath.
Mhm.
And number 3 is ask for help. Like, no, we will never be left alone.
Mhm.
So always ask for help if we need help at any time for any reason. Number 4 is the only way through is in. The
Mhm.
only way through is in, which I think is a beautiful thing to remember for our lives.
Mhm.
Like, there is no bypassing. There is no
Mhm.
going around it. If you've had some sort of trauma, which we've all had, and we don't
Mhm.
realize we've had traumas, but we have. I
Mhm.
know you know you've had traumas, but
Mhm.
we've all had traumas. There's no
Mhm.
bypassing. There's no going around and pretending it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
Like, you would have had these clients too, Karen, that come to you and they're like, oh, I'm fine. No, it didn't bother me. No, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I just don't talk about it. I don't think about it, but I'm fine. But you
Mhm.
know they're not fine. You know
Yeah.
that they haven't addressed their trauma. You
Yeah.
know they haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
So,
It's that resistance, right? The more we resist, the more it persists. And it also reminds me of I had a very wise woman tell me once that she had massive trauma, and this sounds a lot like ayahuasca is and she said I went inside myself and sat in it with Jesus for 2 weeks in all of this trauma and sexual abuse. And she said I literally went inside myself and Jesus sat next to me and I went in it. So it sounds like there's something very similar that happens in these plant ceremonies is feeling it and going in it. Is that right?
yeah, and the thing is though with plant medicine is that you don't have a choice. So
Mhm.
if you're not with plant medicine, like if you're not taking plant medicine, your conscious mind can click over and say, "No, I'm not doing this. I am not
Mhm.
feeling this emotion. I'm ignoring this. I'm distracting myself from this.
And shutting it off.
I'm
You
shutting
can
it off."
shut it off.
You
Yeah.
cannot shut it off in plant medicine. You
Mhm.
cannot. You have
Mhm.
once you're in, you're in. So they
Mhm.
basically take our car keys away from us if we had car keys,
Mhm.
and our phones, so we can't
Mhm.
call anybody,
Mhm.
so that there is no going out. But with
Mhm.
me, the way that I am with anything is, as soon as I'm committed, I'm committed. So
Mhm.
I knew that no matter how hard it was going to be, I was going to do it,
Mhm.
and it was excruciatingly hard,
Mhm.
but everything he had told me helped me. When I needed help, I asked for help. Every time
Mhm.
I felt like I couldn't cope, I would just start breathing through a straw, like he taught me to do. Just
Mhm.
breathe through a straw.
Mhm.
And you can't bypass it. You can't avoid it. Like, it's you have to feel all the feelings.
Mhm.
And as much as I thought that I had grieved for my dad before,
Mhm. Mhm.
was nothing compared to the actual howling that came
Mhm.
out of my body
Mhm.
during that plant medicine ceremony.
Mhm.
That howling was so deep.
Mhm.
And, it just makes me think, obviously my elder siblings have not gone through plant medicine ceremony. Like, what must they be holding in their body?
Mhm.
Because we
Yeah.
all adored our father so much.
Mhm. Mhm.
He is the closest person to me, you know, in all my family. And you know there's so much inside of us, and even the grief was so much that I had for my dad, that wasn't all. That I then did further plant medicine ceremonies after that, because I really felt
Mhm.
called to do one just a few months after, and I
Mhm.
cried even more. Like,
Okay.
it was a few sessions before all the grief came out of my body.
So I want to talk about the plant ceremonies and what you learned about it in another episode because if we move back a little bit, this plant ceremony sounds like it was extremely hard and worth it. You were glad you did it. And the last question I would love to ask you before we close up, because next time we get to go to the what was the plant ceremony, what did you learn, and how exactly did it go, is how did you know that was the awakening for you? How did you know when you walked out of it that was it?
Because my whole life had changed, because I
Okay.
saw everything. I went through the veil. I went to the other side,
Hmm.
and I saw the behind the scenes of my whole life.
Okay.
I saw
That
everything. It wasn't a thinking process, it was a knowing process. It was a shock. It was like, "Oh my God." So I entered another realm,
hmm
and I didn't just think I entered another realm.
hmm
I entered another realm because it wasn't a hallucination, because
hmm
my conscious mind didn't know any of this.
hmm
So everything I saw, my conscious mind didn't
Yeah.
know.
Okay. So we get to talk about this later because I have so many questions for you. And we get to go there later. Did you remember it all, or was it written down or recorded for you?
I remembered it all.
Okay.
It was like, it wasn't like a dream. It was like an experience. And so it's like, think about a powerful experience that you've had. How
Mhm.
can you not remember it? How can you not
Mhm.
know it? So it was like
Mhm.
the
Okay.
most powerful experience in my life. It
Mhm.
wasn't a dream,
Mhm.
it wasn't a vision,
Mhm.
it was an
Okay.
experience. It
Wow.
was, you know, the hardest and the most
Mhm.
euphoric moment of my life. And so how could I not know it?
Okay.
Yes. So all of it was shook me
Okay.
to my core.
And the first chapter of your book, it goes through this experience all written down. And then also, how far does it go? Does it go exactly through the whole experience and then what life was like shortly after that?
So my first chapter, it actually parallels my life with the shaman Sam the shaman's life. So it talks about, the experience of how it came about that I had my first plant medicine ceremony. And I also, in this chapter, because I interviewed Sam, bring his character to life in terms of how was this Australian person, a
Mhm.
shaman trained by Peruvian elders and
Mhm.
holding all this wisdom to do this ceremony with such reverence and such sacredness,
Mhm.
and to be held in this beautiful altar with such high integrity. Because
Mhm.
I want to say that, and I think this is important that I say this in this episode, that not all shamans or facilitators have the same integrity. So before you go and do any plant medicine with any person, and first of all, I would never recommend you do this without a trained facilitator who is experienced in this work. Never
Mhm.
do this alone.
Mhm.
That you do this with someone, if you choose to do it and if you have the calling, that from other people is has high integrity. Because there are
Mhm.
many people who are entering the plant medicine space at the moment because of its popularity that
Mhm.
do not have the training and do
Mhm.
not have the integrity.
Mhm.
So it's so important. This is such a sacred plant that it's not to be taken lightly. It's to be taken very seriously in terms of who administers it and the
Mhm.
prayers that occur around it and the integrity of the altar. Because as I've continued to do more plant medicine ceremonies with this particular shaman, I've been told by many people in the community that he has the highest integrity altar that they know, because they've tried a few different ones. And so
Mhm.
that's really important, that you are with someone who's experienced, who's trained, and who is highly recommended.
Good to know. And how do people find that? Is
They
this in your
don't.
book?
They don't find
Finds
it.
them.
They get found. So
Yeah.
basically, that's the way the universe works, right? So
Mhm.
if this is something that is appealing to you and suddenly you're thinking or feeling, not thinking,
Mhm.
I've got to do this, and you've got to do this, it'll just come to you.
Mhm.
So you don't
Mhm.
need to find it. It's not
Mhm.
a Google thing.
And that brings me around to the title of your book, Effortless Abundance. It's effortless, and the abundance of it comes
Exactly.
to you.
Exactly. You don't have to do
Mhm.
anything. It will come to you. And we're so conditioned to believe that we have to work so hard to do anything in our life, and we don't. It'll
Mhm.
come to us if we just get out of our own way. That's
Mhm.
exactly why that book is called Effortless Abundance, because we have the ability to draw everything we want to us, the
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
the money, the love, the relationships, everything. We just need to get out of our own way because it's
Yeah,
already there.
it's effortless. It's that it gets to be easy
Yeah,
and
but
allowing.
we stand in our own way. That's what we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear the sequel on exactly what happens at the plant medicine ceremony, and then even the day shortly following that. I can imagine that your life was turned upside down, and we get to hear all about that.
Yeah,
So,
so many things happened. So thank you
yes.
so much for holding the space for me to recount this story today. It's changed my life. It's taken my life from being stressful and although fulfilling, I did have a fulfilling life prior to this experience, fulfilling but stressful
Mhm,
and very, very, very busy and
mhm,
very tiring and with lots of drama and things happening all the time, to one that's really serene and at peace. And
mhm.
this is what made all the difference.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us and being vulnerable and, in what it was for you. Because
Thank you.
it's not always easy to be vulnerable and tell everybody our whole story. So
Yeah, thank
thank
you
you.
so much, Karen. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
beautiful sister. And there you go. My spiritual awakening happened on your birthday, my love.
Right? Right? Lucky day, 7/7.
Of
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, we will catch up soon about the
Yeah.
sequel.
Okay. See you
All
later.
right. All right.
Thanks for watching. We hope you loved it.
And if you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel
And remember, always connect to your truest essence.
and choose love. We'll see you next time.